Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Siegel, the Director of Strategic Programs at Illuminate. Welcome to our Crown Jewel Conversation Series. Illuminate is a catalyst for social change for women's advancement, equity, and justice. We have created the collective to strengthen and advance Jewish women's leadership globally through the creation of a transformative network to achieve the social change we seek. Illuminate invests in Jewish entrepreneurial women, executive, and leaders. We call them jewels, who are devoting their lives to tackling society's most pressing issues throughout the United States, Israel, and around the globe. Each year, we select 10 women to be in the collective's cohort-based leadership advancement program, which fosters connections, encourages partnerships, provides resources, and a curriculum tailored to meet their needs. Our global network is now 50 women strong. Our conversation today features one of our incredible jewels. Ella Alon is the Executive Director of Itach Maki, Women Lawyers for Social Justice in Israel. Before joining Itach Maki, Ella was the head of the legal department and deputy of the regulator of cooperatives in the Ministry of the Economy. Before that, Ella worked as a lawyer at the legal clinics and at the Law and Public Interest program in Tel Aviv University. Ella's legal areas of expertise are labor law and social security, including legal support to organizing workers, administrative law and municipal law, access to justice, and corporate and cooperative law. Ella took part in the foundation of Koach LaOvadim, Ella, you'll correct me if I mispronounced, Democratic Workers Union, and founded the union's Volunteer Lawyers Network. Ella holds a Bachelor's of Law with honors and a Master of Law, also with honors, from Tel Aviv University. Please write any questions you have in the chat, and we will do our best to incorporate them if time allows. To begin the conversation, I'm pleased to introduce the immediate past president of Illuminate, Rachel Weinstein.
Hey, sorry. Hi, everyone, and welcome and hello, Ella. It's so good to be with you. Thank you for sharing your evening with us. We so appreciate it. We all are hanging on all of the news coming out of Israel every day, every minute, and we're very eager to hear what you have to say. I think before we dive into all of that, it would be just great to get to know you a little bit better. And we'd love for you to just share a little bit of your personal story and what led your journey to Itach Maki.
Thank you, Rachel. First, I would like to thank you for the opportunity and for the support and partnership of Illuminate with Itach Maki for many, many long years. I will tell you a bit about myself and about Itach Maki. So Itach Maki addresses the most pressing challenges in Israel, looking at the most vulnerable population in the intersection of gender, poverty, and diversity. It is an Arab-Jewish women partnership that looks at women perspective and women's solidarity as a way to overcome obstacles that divide us. The organization's mission completely aligns with my interest and experience, advocating for the needs of legal rights of diverse women living in poverty in Israel. Ever since starting university, aged 16, I developed a commitment to feminism and fighting economic inequalities. As a second-year student, I founded with other students the movement for fighting poverty, a volunteers organization dedicated to helping disadvantaged people by law students. Those years of volunteering gave me the ability and the interest to see the perspective of people who live in poverty. After working for a few years in public service, my career took me back to Tel Aviv University as a legal clinic teacher. This was when I first encountered Itach Maki. It was in a joint project concerning Arab women's employment. I was impressed with the work of Itach Ma'aki as we tackled together the interconnected complex barriers faced by Arab women in the workforce. When I had my first child, I decided to leave my work in civil society. Thinking as a mother, it will be difficult for me to dedicate the endless time and effort this kind of work entails. I returned to public service and worked as the deputy of the Registrar of Cooperatives in the Ministry of Economy. After 4 years, I felt ready to move on to something closer to my heart, something meaningful, where I could make a real difference. Then I saw the advert for executive director of Itach Ma'aki. And I knew immediately this was an incredible opportunity. It was a chance to further positive social change at a leading Israeli organization centered around the causes I am most passionate about, like fighting poverty, gender equality, and shared society. This opportunity had come just in the right time for me, but in the moment I wavered. I worried I was underqualified for this position, and anxiety is shared by many women, as we often doubt our abilities. The final day of the application window arrived, and after some encouragement from a friend, I took the plunge and applied. This was 5 years ago, just as we stepped into an era of instability and crisis following crisis. It is evident that those crises impact women differently and more intensely, and especially women from underserved communities. It was also evident that women do not take a significant part in decision-making, and that if they did, the crisis would have been handled differently. And it is also evident that our work is critical, highlighting women's needs and getting women into decision-making tables.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that you got over whatever imposter syndrome you had. I think so many of us have it, and it's so unfortunate. And I think the work that you're doing, the work that we're doing at Illuminate, hopefully we're going to push people beyond that. That's a goal for our future. I think unfortunately, and possibly forever now, we're going to see a delineation in Israel's history when we talk about it, in the same way that we talk about the US before September 11th. I mean, we're going to talk about Israel before October 7th and after October 7th. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how that demarcation has manifested in the work of Itach Ma'aki. Sort of what were you doing before? And then how have you shifted, and what has now evolved for your organization?
So we redirected all our work to the emerging needs of women due to the war. Our Women, Peace and Security program is working intensively to bring diverse women's voices and needs to the international community and lobby for women representation in decision-making concerning the conflict. We also collected testimonies of diverse women affected by the war. When the war broke, we were overwhelmed with inquiries, questions, and challenges in the area of employment, for which the government failed to respond for a very long time, and in many cases has not done so to this day. As a grassroots organization, Itach Ma'aki has the ability to understand the needs of women from calls received in our hotline, discern the difficulties and challenges to be addressed in the areas of employment and social security, and recommend modes of action that provide solutions which include those populations which are usually transparent and marginalized. Lately, we published a report about the impact of the war on employment of women from underserved communities based on cases that we received. The report includes recommendations for policy changes and for this crisis and for future crises. And I think that Rachel will share the summary of the report in English, and the report is in Hebrew, the whole report. In our Bedouin Women Rights Center, we had to respond quickly to the needs of the most vulnerable women in the unrecognized villages that no one else would help in a very patriarchal society. Those are undocumented women, single mothers, violence victims. We organized quickly with a net of local leaders called Al Nashamiyat. It was established about 10 years ago by the director of our Bedouin Rights Center in order to drive women to vote in the elections. And we use this network to establish 16 emergency relief centers in unrecognized villages, providing assistance to around 1,400 families. The need was enormous because there was no shelter there, no alarms, no sirens, and even no coverage of Iron Dome. And people were afraid to leave their houses, and mothers couldn't leave their children, and also most of the workplaces were shut down, and so they had no income. In the beginning of the war, even there was no food in the groceries. No food got there. So what we did was to deliver food parcels, and that we collected, that were collected for us in the center of Israel, and other necessities. One of the people that helped us collect the food in the center was Shir Nosetsky from Have You Seen the Horizon Lately? And out of this initiative, we created together with her and other organizations the Joint Jewish Arab Emergency Center that delivered food to both Arab and Jewish localities, and especially delivered hope for a shared future in very difficult times. Our staff and volunteers and volunteer leaders witnessed the intense emotional stress women from unrecognized villages experienced. And this led us to another interesting project created from the needs of women on the ground. The local leaders organized the women in need, and we brought an expert therapist who was willing to take the risk and do group therapy sessions in the unrecognized and unprotected villages. And it worked really well. And now apparently this model that we created through the needs of women, we developed it just and apparently it has a name. It's called Therapy in the Backyard. And because it worked so well, now we are training other therapists to do this, to work according to this model. And above all of this, we continue to do what we always do, helping women to access their rights and do policy work to promote their needs. Our mission now is to continue to work with the local leaders, train them and strengthen their ability to bring their voices to decision makers, and hopefully become a formal part of the local male-dominated leadership.
Yeah, amazing. I think what you had to say about the Bedouin villages is so interesting, and I think it's, something that we're not getting very much information about how those marginalized populations, about how Arab Israelis are being impacted by the war. And I want to go there in a couple minutes and talk about that with you. But I just want to circle back just to ask a couple questions about, you talked about, the employment work, the work you're doing around employment law. Can you give us some examples of what have been some of the more recent challenges that you're working on in employment law?
So you can hear me?
I can hear you. You're a little frozen, but we can hear you. So forge ahead.
Okay, so I think that my computer is a bit collapsing, but if you can hear me, then then we'll go on. So I can give you an example of the fact that the most marginalized women in the workforce, like women that work by an hour, they were the ones who got no compensation. They couldn't leave their work and get unemployment benefits because they were then they would lose their jobs. The employer did not want to fire them or to give them a leave without a payment, because then he would lose them, and they got no compensation. So the most marginalized workers, women workers especially, got nothing. And this is something that we think needs to be changed. There should be some certainty about the way that, because we have so many emergency crises, then we need to have certainty for workers what will be, and for employers what will be the compensation from the government, and how will it work, so people can keep working after the crisis, or at least how as much as they can. So this is this is what we suggested in our report and our policy work.
Yes, I think hourly wage workers are always the ones that are most at risk during these situations. So that's really important. I know you're part of many feminist circles in Israel. Can you just talk a bit generally about what the impact of the war has been on women leaders in Israel?
So the war affects women unproportionately. I can share my personal experience. My husband serves as a lawyer in the army, and I hardly saw him for a few months after October 7th, and was alone with my kids. And I can't even complain because others were in much worse situation. Some of our employees were under rocket attacks. Where I live, there were no attacks. The house of one of our staff members was destroyed, and fortunately, she was able to save her husband and their small kids. And of course, all of us have connections to people who were killed or are in danger. So the war impacts all of us every day. I believe that we are all in a collective trauma. And I think that responding to the emerging needs of other women helped us overcome the trauma and filled us with energy.
Yes, I'm sure many of you are running on adrenaline, but it's impossible when you are just constantly bombarded by the realities of your life, and yet you have to continue to lead your organizations, to inspire and mobilize other people. I mean, how do you find the strength to do that?
I think that this is what gives us strength. This is what gave me strength, and I think all of our employees. They were the help that we give others. Just like.
Yeah, I think that the having the purpose probably is right. The being able to do something.
Yes,
I totally understand.
I think it was also something that we saw all over Israel. Everyone was trying to do something to help. So I think that volunteering was one of our. It was the best therapy during the war. Volunteering and helping others.
It also creates community, right? I mean, it brings people together. Yeah.
And especially in when it's Arab and Jewish together, I think it also bring hope for a shared future, and this is something that we try to do.
Yes. I know, before October 7th, obviously, right, the women's movement in Israel was there was a lot of collaboration and partnership and working towards strategic goals for how to advance women's rights and secure women's rights in Israel, and the right, not the right to vote, but like representation and changing the family laws to be more protective of women and all of that. And so I'm sort of wondering now, what does a strategic feminist collaboration look like? Are you still partnering? Are you able to pursue those same agenda items that you had before October 7th? Where does that all stand?
So I think that October 7th and the continuous war make it very clear that what we lack is women in decision-making forums, and that without women bringing a different perspective to leadership, democracy and stability are under a serious threat. This puts a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of feminist organizations, and seems like a great potential for collaboration to make a substantial impact. But the crisis forces us to deal with the other pressing issues. Feminist organizations were able to collaborate on certain issues and write some position papers together. But if I compare it to the COVID-19 crisis, where philanthropic efforts were invested in organizing the feminist field, there is much less joint impact these days. But I can say that now we are participating many feminist organizations in a strategic process initiated by NCGW that will hopefully help us organize effectively and develop resources for this collaboration.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's always the way that the women's issues sort of get pushed to the side when you're meeting the basic necessities, and yet they're so key to drastically changing the system, so to try and eliminate these situations going forward. So I'm glad that you're finding ways to connect again. You talked a couple times about the work of your organization, sort of around, you embrace and you promote shared society for Jews and Arabs living in Israel. And your staff is made up of Jews and Palestinians. And as I said, we don't hear so much about the experience of Arabs living in Israel, Arabs who are citizens of Israel. How has October 7th impacted, how has that impacted the relationships that you have both within your organization and your staff and the partner organizations that you work with?
So times of intense conflict are always difficult in shared society organizations because the national identity becomes more dominant when you are under threat and coping with trauma. In my experience, the most effective way to deal with this situation is to talk. Even if you are afraid of what you will hear or what you will say, this is the best solution. So our first group discussion in Itach Ma'aki was on October 8th, just a day after the Hamas attack. Not everyone were able to participate, and some left in the middle. Some of the things were difficult to hear, but the sky did not fall, and it was so important for the staff to be heard. What we try to do is to create safe spaces for discussions with less judgment and more curiosity, sometimes with facilitation. And we could share terrible feelings and concerns, but we just did it by discussion. And the rule was not to do it in writing.
Yeah.
Especially not WhatsApp is the enemy.
Yeah.
So I encourage the staff, including myself, to talk to each other wherever there's a misunderstanding, to assume good intentions, to trust each other professionally and ideologically, and also to consider each other's point of view. Things are not perfect, but they got much worse when staff members refrained from saying what they feel, and or when I was afraid that they will speak. And when they were able to speak again, so and say the things that they feel, then the sky did not fall, and we could continue. So this is what was like. I think this is the key. We also learned from women who participated in the successful peace negotiation in North Ireland that their role was, even in the worst situations, to keep meeting with women from both sides. Because in those situations, women's voices are even more important. So we continued our cross-border steering committee discussions. We met with we met even in October, a week after the attack, with the Palestinian women from the West Bank, and we all shared our pain, and we learned through this experience that though we come from different perspectives, we all want the same thing: secure lives for us and for our families, life with dignity and respect. And we learned that if we focus on the future and understand that we need to find ways to live together, because no one is going anywhere, and we have strong connections to each other, everything becomes more simple.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about this before, but I'm sort of wondering, do you think October 7th and the conflict that has been since has been a setback toward the efforts to move toward shared society? Or do you think it has sort of reinforced that movement about why it's more important than ever? I mean, has it gone one way or the other, or in terms of funding for shared society, has it had an impact?
I don't know about funding. I think that we all got emergency funds for emergency needs. So I can't say something about the investment in shared society as a whole, but I can say that I think that shared society got hit very harshly on October 7th. It's like the Arab population are being silenced, and the situation is really disturbing. Like the student union is now pushing for a law that will fire lecturers in the university that they think that they don't like what they say. They think they support terror, or even just saying things that are not that hurt the feelings of the students, some of the students. So it's like everything is chaotic here, because we are like democracy has shrinking in Israel for the last year and a half, but now I think that under the war, it's like they use the war to shrinken it more, and to even to hunt people, not just Arabs, but especially Arabs but also Jewish people who has other opinions. It comes to arrests and indictment of people that just for saying what they think, and it's it was that's a lot. And while this is happening, then other things are also happening for the Arab society. Like since the beginning of the war, 89 people were murdered, and there's no, the police does not that they don't do much about it. It's like their lives are not that important. There are house demolitions, and also in our Bedouin Women Rights Center, we encounter women that undocumented women that are being arrested and deported from Israel, and even mothers to small children that lived in Israel. There are women from the West Bank or Gaza and that lived in Israel for many years. Some of them are subject to violence, and they were now that they are really hunted. So it's difficult because we receive all those calls, and there's not much to do with it, and we try to help as we can, but I think it's more of a policy that tries to set us all on fire, to make since the flames are not high enough now for some people, then they try to make people angry, so something will happen inside Israel. This is my feeling, at least.
And just to clarify, I mean, some of what you're saying is happening to undocumented, people living in Israel, but some of it's also happening to Israeli citizens who happen to be Arab, correct?
Yes, we have people that are doctors and lecturers, and sometimes they spot those people who have the more that they are more recognized. And now there was someone who's famous in cosmetics, that was arrested really in a humiliating way, and they photoed her arrest, and they published it, the police, something unbelievable. But they try to find people who are known, and try to use them as an example, so people will not say what they think about the war. And the war is terrible, so people can't stay quiet. But this is how things are happening right now. So it's really
they're silencing the influencers. It's really, it's a tactic used. When we were prepping for this call, you said something that really, really struck a chord with me. You said, as an Israeli, that you feel responsible for Jews all over the world. I think we're so often feeling as Jews that we're responsible for Israel. The Jews in diaspora feel that we're responsible for Israel, but that you said that you, as an Israeli, feel responsible for Jews all over the world. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. I can see from the news, but also from my cohort colleagues, and from what I heard in the retreat, how the war influences the lives of Jews and also Palestinians, I guess, all over the world. It influences their safety, their ability to talk freely, impacts their work. They are subjected to anti-Semitism and ignorance. And as an Israeli, I feel responsible for all this. I believe that those implications should be taken into account in decision-making during the war. Unfortunately, even harsh implications on Israelis are not taken into account by our government, so you can't expect much, but I think it's something that should be seen.
Well, we appreciate that. Do you think that's shared by other Israelis as well?
I think so. I think that Israelis really care about Jews in the diaspora. Some even think that because that we have to be strong, so Jews all over the world will have a place to be in, a place they can come to in times of distress. But I think that and some of them think just see the damage that we do, but I think that people really care about Jews all over the world.
Yeah. Well, that's an added burden to carry during this time, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful at the same time. So how has being part of the collective sort of impacted your leadership? You joined, literally, you started the collective, right, in September, and within not even a month of joining, you were already forced into this new place. So I'm sure it's been like a funny time. So, you
No,
know,
I'm in cohort 4, I think.
oh,
It's like
cohort 4. Okay. The one before. So, I mean, you've had collective before October 7th, and you've had collective after. Sort of, what does that look like for you? How have you leveraged the relationships? How has it impacted your leadership?
So I think that being a part of a collective widened my perspective and gave me a chance to look at my work and my organization from the balcony. I think that most of the times this gave me the space I needed to cope with the most stressful problems. It has been, I'm afraid that not just during the war, but also before, it has been the most challenging time for us in Israel. So I felt that there is much more potential of learning from each other and even collaborate on common issues. We had many ideas, and I hope that they will realize in the future. But when you have so much on your table, it's difficult to realize the potential. And I think that, and also the personal development budget helped me cope with the challenges of the war, and even before the war, the challenge of being a Jewish Arab organization, and the impact of the war on the relationship inside the organization. I also learned a lot from the retreats, and it also lifted my spirits in the most challenging times. All the time that I came to the state, I remember that I came after the elections, and it just and also this time it's so important. You can't understand how it brings us energy, at least to me. I just came back with hope, and I think this is all that we need. And I think that what made it happen was spending time with inspiring professional women, all struggling to promote justice and equity all over the world. And I would like to thank you for this wonderful experience. Each time I
Wow.
learned so much.
Well, we're very proud of the work that you're doing. We're very grateful for the work that you're doing. If we can offer you anything like hope and strength during this time, I think I think that fills our hearts, because it feels sometimes, being a Jew in diaspora, that there's very little that we can do. I'm going to ask you one last question just about added recent support for our collective members in Israel, but I just want to invite anyone who might have a question to put it in the chat if you'd like to ask a question. But I know that recognizing the added challenges that you've had, all of our jewels in Israel, that we've also sort of created a mini cohort for you together as Israelis, with some support on the ground there, and a consultant to support you. How has that been for you?
I think it was much needed, and Liron is wonderful. I know her from before, and she's always trying to help, and she has so much knowledge in our field, and especially with the Jewish and Arab organizations, and with feminist organizations, and she's been so supportive. And for us, we felt like we are taken care of, and I think it was a really good decision.
Well, I'm glad. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for sharing your evening with us. You're doing such important work, and however we can continue to support you during this critical time, we are here. It looks like there weren't any other questions, so I'm going to turn it over to Rachel Siegel.
Thank you so much, Ella, for taking the time to share your wisdom and your story with us. We're so proud to support your leadership and Itach Maki, especially at this time. Thank you, Rachel, for leading us through this conversation. We hope you will visit Itach Maki's website to learn more about their ongoing work. Please sign up for Illuminate's newsletter so that you will find out about events and updates such as this one. Join us for our next Crown Jewel conversation on Thursday, July 11th with Carrie Brody, and that's at 12 p.m. Eastern. Carrie is the founder and executive director of Emma's Torch. We offer these sessions at no cost to you. As a nonprofit committed to women's advancement, we count on generous support from donors like you to power our network and ask that you consider supporting Illuminate and our work to advance Jewish women leaders. Thank you all for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you soon. And Hag Sameach. Speak Shavuot.
Hag Sameach.